states' rights, and I think that's right. I also want to thank Congressman Womack, who I think got us off on the right foot in moving in the right direction. I do see that there are a number of things that I think the e-tailers, if you will, have pointed out that need to be addressed, that can be addressed to make it a better bill, and try to, as you know, I'm working to try to get the disparate groups together to try to tackle the audit provisions, the integration costs, the compliance burdens that particularly for a small upstart that would have to deal with. How do we phase this in? But I think if the Congress can, and we will, tackle those issues, we can create what I think is the right principle here, and that is one of parity. I think every one of you have said that parity is an important principle in an issue. Mr. Moylan, would you disagree that parity is an important issue?
Well, it's very clearly an important issue, and that's why I put forward an origin sourcing solution that I think does that.
If you agree with parity, I don't see how you can ever get to parity under an origin-based system, ever. Because if you're in Oregon and you have no sales tax burden, and you buy something from, say, the state of New York, you're going to have to pay that sales tax, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so if you're standing there in Oregon buying the exact same thing, and you're paying zero sales tax by buying it there locally, but if you go over the internet and buy it out in New York, suddenly you've got to pay a double-digit percentage sales tax, correct? That's not parity.
Well, I would respond by saying this, that what you're pointing to gets back to the original point that I made about who the taxpayer is for the purposes of sales taxes. It sounds like you're saying that the individual is what you're looking at. What I'm suggesting is that because the business has the legal and administrative burden of the tax, hold
on. Let's tackle that issue right there. When I go to buy something, I get a receipt, whether it's online or I'm there in person, and it's going to have a couple line items: cost of the good, the sales tax, and the shipping, if there is shipping. I pay that. It's not the company that pays that. And what I'm trying to say, and I think you make a good point in one regard, if we can diminish the integration, the audit, the compliance, and the integration costs, and smooth those lines, so that whether it's the mom and pop who's trying to do this out of New Hampshire or Virginia or Utah or whatever it might be, to the big company that maybe doesn't have physical presence in every state, if we can soften that burden, then I think we're onto something, and we can get to actual parity. But what the problem I have with origin-based is that you never, ever get to parity. You just don't.
I think what we're getting at is the difference between the legal incidence of a tax and the economic incidence of the tax. And what you're referring to, the economic incidence, who bears the financial cost, so to speak, absolutely it falls on individuals, just as every tax under the sun does. The corporate income tax, as we well know, falls either on workers, on shareholders, or on customers.
We're on a different tax. We're talking about sales tax. When I go and I purchase an item, there is a line item for sales tax. And what I'm saying is, if they're going to truly have parity, that person in Oregon who chooses to live there, and maybe they're taxed a different way, like in Texas, but if they're choosing to live in a state that has no sales tax, I think they should have that parity. And let me go on.
May I respond?
I would just as soon put a knife in the middle of the room, let you all scramble and fight for it, and I think that would be much more interesting. But maybe Mr. Krantz can tackle this one in the comments that we're talking about here.
Yeah, I think Mr. Moylan would be happiest if we went to a VAT, if we adopted a system of tax that truly and unequivocally taxed production. That's different than what we do in the world, in the U.S. today and at the state and local level. We tax consumption. We know where consumption occurs. Mr. Crosby gets his lunch here in D.C. He's consuming the lunch in D.C. He should pay tax here because that's where the consumption occurred. That's how we tax today. Mr. Moylan and Mr. Cox's proposals would upend that and would impose tax on production, which I think most of us would agree is not how we want to grow our economy.
I do agree. I think taxing based on consumption as opposed to production is something that we ought to deeply concern. I have purchased things here in Washington, D.C., and I've said, you know what, I'm a resident in Utah. I shouldn't have to pay that. I have them actually ship it to Utah, the exact same good I could buy in Utah, and avoid the sales tax. I don't think that's right. That doesn't meet the principle and the standard that I think we're all trying to get to, which is one of parity. I do hope, Mr. Chairman, We can bring the disparate groups together. I do think we can tackle these things as I've highlighted here. We have to deal with this. Everybody here is trying to do that. I appreciate that. The states are clamoring for it. And I do hope, Mr. Chairman, that we deal with this sooner rather than later, and appreciate this hearing. Yield back.
Chair, thanks, John.